What is the investment needed in order to create a return on investment of your hustle, your passion, and your purpose? This is the ROI. Hello and welcome to the ROI, the show where I sit down with innovators and creatives to get their insight on how to get a return on your hustle, your passion, and your ambition in order to meet your bottom line and get to the top. I'm your host, Rhonesha Byng. I'm sitting down on this episode of the ROI with author and entrepreneur Alex Wolff. She wrote a book titled Resonate, and I'm so excited to chat with her more about it. So your first book just came out, Resonate, for anyone who wants to build a social audience. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is the best first question to ask you. What do most people get wrong about building a loyal social following?
I think particularly our generation, what we get wrong is thinking that the metrics of likes and follows and comments equate to having a brand. And there's a difference between having a brand and stimulating an algorithm. And I think many people are giving a lot of time and effort to stimulating algorithms instead of trying to, design meaningful connections with people through the internet.
I feel like every day I hear people complaining about the algorithm, and I'm actually one of those people too. So what's the secret to bypass it? Like you said, talking about connecting to feelings and things like that have nothing to do with the algorithm.
I think that it's all about going back to the foundation of how information gets spread and how we prioritize and share things that are valuable to us. And I think that, one of the points I make in the book is that the ancient algorithm is just the mouth. It's word of mouth. It's two people who trust each other and who are saying, hey girl, did you try this product or did you check out this show? Because especially in today's social climate where there's so much to keep up with, it's overwhelming. I feel like to go on the internet and be burdened with this responsibility to find the best of everything, it's almost impossible. So we need to navigate those choices with our friends and with our family members who can tell us, hey, this was awesome, you should try this out. And when you think of it that way, the technical algorithms aren't as threatening because they can do whatever they're going to do. At the end of the day, if you're trying to get human beings to be what your audience is made up of, then just figure out the language and the ways that they pass that information on any platform and any time.
And speaking of brands, you consult with brands pretty often about how to do sort of what you did with your first brand. Have you ever had the problem where, a brand wants to work with you, they're like, Alex, we love you, your ideas are awesome, and then you give them your ideas and then they're like, actually no. Yes. And then how do you navigate that? How do you get them to sort of get on your level, so to speak?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that was a big learning curve for me because I started my business just, dropped out of school, started it up on my own, bootstrapped it, and so coming into these more corporate environments was an experience in the sense that I was used to just shipping things when I thought of them. And then I saw how brands, depending on how they're designed, have a whole infrastructure that can take something that would be really simple to ship for me and, make it like a 6-month, 12-month project. So I think it's really a matter of distinguishing before I even work with a brand, how flexible they are, how willing they are to try innovative strategies, how trusting they're going to be towards my approach and towards the new market, the new economy, because it's not a matter of who's right and who's wrong. It's just a matter of what's really happening on an objective level to our economy and how can you respond to that in a way that'll be favorable for your brand.
Yeah. And something you're really good at is spotting trends before they even become mainstream, which is, I think, very rare and a really great talent, not just to spot it, but also to be able to articulate and provide, context to people who aren't really at that part yet. And so I wonder from you, because you spot trends so early, what trends do you see dying in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so I think sort of what we were talking about earlier, this I think people will begin to see the lack of correlation there is between certain metrics like the like button and followers to actual success and the quantity of transactions that happen in a business. The New York Times recently just released an article talking about this whole concept of the nano influencer, which is even smaller than, audience-wise than the micro influencer.
Yeah.
And I think that's a response to so many brands understanding how much money has been wasted in trying to navigate the democratization of how the internet has changed purchase behavior. And I think it's wise to not get distracted by the metrics, and I think over the next 2 years people will be more keen to that.
Yeah.
And I hope it'll provide a refreshing approach to the internet and make it feel less competitive, because that's part of what makes it such a high maintenance, draining experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
You see a post, immediately you look at the number of comments, number of likes, you go through the comments, and it's just like, versus, which is something that you talk about in a video you put out recently, Facebook versus Snapchat, about how Snapchat really, hones in on just like the connection and the humanness of talking to someone and sharing with someone versus the competitiveness of the likes and the comments and all that. So your book, going back to your book, Resonate, I feel like you reveal so much about yourself and you're very authentic. And even on social media, it feels like you share a lot. And I think a lot of millennials sort of struggle with this balance of like, how much do I share without feeling like I'm oversharing, or how much do I, keep to myself without feeling like I'm being fake?
Right.
And so how did you find that balance? And do you ever feel like you're sharing too much?
I think it's definitely something that needs to be determined on an individual basis, because I think it depends on your personality. It depends on what kind of brand you're trying to build. If you're trying to be a politician, that's different than trying to be, an entertainer, right? So I think you have to consider all of those variables. But I will say that, the personal brands that I see succeeding in the past few years have been brands that really do approach the internet as an intimate environment, almost as, the analogy I use is like you're in the room with the person. I think the reason why, the YouTube makeup girls have been so successful is because, you're literally on a digital plane in the girl's room, with her while she's putting on her makeup, which is a different production standard than I think we were used to growing up, because television is such a grand production, whereas the internet offers this really intimate sort of exchange.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So how do you pick and choose what you share?
It's been a journey. I think, one of the things I try to remind myself always, which is so easy to forget, is that the hardest thing to do is be yourself. And I think that I just try to make sure that I feel like I'm being myself.
Mm-hmm.
And if I feel like it's straying off from that, then that's my red flag,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to rewind a little bit to way back when you founded Boss Babe. Mm-hmm. And you sold that company now, which is awesome. You're on to, your next level, your next phase. But with Boss Babe, I feel like it's one of the OG subscription-based online communities. And I feel like a lot of people now are looking at community and trying to monetize it. Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to an entrepreneur that's looking to monetize their online community?
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant strategy in the sense that, you got to come up with, I believe in the power of direct-to-consumer companies, and I think that if you have a brand that's strong enough that people want to pay you directly versus, through a third-party brand, then that's great. Mm-hmm. And I think it's about establishing a very strong brand that offers an identity for whoever's a part of this community. It has to be a statement that they're a part of this community, and it's something that they want to proudly share, because that's part of what people are paying for. I think the internet has created this ecosystem where, especially the millennial, we're really searching for communities that feel like they do our beliefs justice and our philosophies justice. Mm-hmm. So if your brand can do that, then I think it increases the likelihood of thriving membership.
Mm-hmm. Identity, that's a really important factor, because goes back to, skip all the marketing jargon. It's really about humans and giving humans like that's something to connect to, and also the words to articulate how they're feeling and how they want to represent themselves in the world. So I think that's awesome advice. We're going to go now to our next segment, which is titled From Inspiration to Invoice.
Okay. Sounds good.
Inspiration to Invoice. I loved that. I thought of that concept really because of the Jay-Z line in the song, and it's like everybody wants to be a boss until those invoices come through. So let's actually start with, the positive experience of invoices when you actually first got paid from your first invoice when you sent it. Do you remember that?
I remember some big ones because they were big. Yeah.
What's like a big one that you really remember from your beginning days where you sent an invoice maybe for like, five digits or something?
What was the inspiration, you mean? Or?
So do you just remember the experience? Like, what was the idea and how did you?
It was kind of a wake-up call on a personal level because it was the first time that I had that much money and I didn't have anyone to call to celebrate. It's kind of like a sad story.
What?
It was a wake-up call. Yeah, because, I had people, and I tell this story. I've told this story before. It's like I had people to call, but they're not the kind of people you want to call to say you just got a bunch of money. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, building a business for me, I built it when I was 21, 22. Like, for me, it was a big wake-up call to understand that, money is great and it gives you power, but at the end of the day, if you don't have people to celebrate it with, like people who are going to be cheering for you and not sort of being like jealous,
like
or
fake
petty.
happy.
Yeah. And that I think was the most valuable part of that experience because it made me start to prioritize genuine connections in my life. So now when I get a bag, we can all celebrate.
Yeah. How about that other side of the invoice when you actually had to fulfill it and you actually maybe first started getting your like recurring invoices from people that work for you?
Oh, okay, I see.
What was that like?
That was also very stressful. I think, part of like my whole story is that like as soon as I started to see, like Jay-Z's right, you know what I mean? Like as soon as I started to see how much responsibility it was gonna be to financially like run a company and fulfill, all these tasks, I was like maybe there's other things that I should be doing because the creative aspect for what I built worked, but then you have these other sort of practical logistical parts that I realized like, this is why you hire, a COO, this is why you hire, a CTO, and I was like, yeah, this is not
this is not fun
I'm
anymore.
gonna go write a book now.
Yeah. So was it hard to sell your company when you decided that you didn't want to be there anymore? Was it? Wow. What was it like? How did you even go about doing something like selling your company? Not many people do that.
Yeah, I think just like any good transaction, both parties should be happy. And I think for that there was a happy seller and a happy buyer.
Yeah.
And that, just was good.
But you don't just put a stake in the ground. Hello, I'm selling my company.
No.
How was that process really? It was conversations, dinners.
Conversations, and I think people on the inside understanding sort of what my next moves were. I think being honest about, for people in business listening to this, it's like just being honest about what you want your next moves to be, because then it gives people an idea of like either how they can help, how they can like, give resources, and I made it very clear sort of like what I wanted my next move to look like.
Okay, well, I think that's the perfect segue to go into our last portion, which is, what is next for you? What do you have coming up? Resonate is still resonating with your audience, and you're doing a lot of speaking and stuff, but I'm sure you have a lot more to come.
So next is a mini documentary I'm working on called Attention for Sale, and it's about how advertising business models being heavily funded in the way they are is creating an effect where the collective attention span is deteriorating, and how that's becoming a threat to art, intellectualism, and the quality of human relationships.
Yeah.
So,
how long is it?
15 minutes.
Okay.
It's a mini doc, yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. So any last piece of advice you want to give?
Piece of advice, just say to, don't get lost in the sauce.
Okay.
And do what makes you happy.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex.